Algeria, a North African country, has a long and complicated history of colonization, resistance, and independence. In this video, we'll be exploring the brutal and violent French occupation of Algeria and the Algerians' defense of their country. Background. In 1830, the French invaded Algeria and established a colony there, claiming it as a part of France. The French took control of the land, resources, and people, and imposed their language, culture, and religion on the Algerians. The Algerians, who had been living in the area for thousands of years, were treated as second-class citizens in their own country. Resistance and brutality. The Algerians resisted the French occupation from the beginning, and over the years, their resistance grew stronger and more organized. The French responded with brutality, using torture, massacres, and forced displacement to quell the resistance. The most brutal period of the French occupation was during the Algerian War of Independence, which lasted from 1954 to 1962. During this time, the French used napalm, phosphorus bombs, and other deadly weapons against the Algerian population. Estimates of the number of Algerians killed during the war range from 350,000 to over 1 million. Algerian defense. Despite the overwhelming force of the French army, the Algerians refused to give up their fight for independence. In 1954, the National Liberation Front, FLN, was formed, a political and military organization that aimed to liberate Algeria from French colonial rule. The FLN used guerrilla tactics to attack French military and civilian targets, and also worked to build alliances with other countries and gain international support for their cause. French response. The French responded with increased brutality, using torture, bombings, and other forms of violence to suppress the Algerian resistance. In 1957, the French military launched a massive counterinsurgency campaign known as the Battle of Algiers, which targeted the FLN and the Algerian civilian population. The campaign was marked by widespread human rights abuses, including torture and extrajudicial killings. International attention. The violence and brutality of the French occupation began to gain international attention and condemnation. In 1961, the International Campaign for the Abolition of Nuclear Weapons organized the Russell Tribunal, a tribunal that investigated the crimes committed by the French military in Algeria. The tribunal found the French guilty of war crimes and crimes against humanity, and called for an end to the French occupation. Independence. In 1962, after 8 years of war, the French finally agreed to Algerian independence. The war had taken a devastating toll on both sides. With estimates of over 1 million Algerians killed and thousands of French soldiers and civilians dead or injured. The independence of Algeria marked a turning point in the history of colonialism, inspiring other liberation movements around the world and challenging the idea that colonialism was a legitimate form of governance. Legacy. The Algerian War of Independence had a lasting impact on Algerian society and the world. The brutality and violence of the French occupation contributed to a legacy of trauma and human rights abuses that is still felt today. The war also inspired other liberation movements around the world, and challenged the idea that colonialism was a legitimate form of governance. Conclusion. The brutal and violent French occupation of Algeria and the Algerians' defense of their country is a complex and tragic story. It is a story of colonization, resistance, and independence, of brutality and resilience, and of the lasting impact of colonialism on a people and a country. By understanding this history, we can better appreciate the struggles and triumphs of the Algerian people and their ongoing efforts to build a just and peaceful society. Struggles and triumphs of the Algerian people and their ongoing efforts to build a just and peaceful society.